Cynthia. Well, today we've heard from quite a few people where death is really up in consciousness and also a little bit about being burdened by duties or unburdened. And some people have been on vacation, and I'm thinking there's a relationship there. Personally, I've been thinking about how important it is to really relax in meditation. You know, I don't mean checking out, of course, but how to let go of the anxiety, worries, burdens, desires, at least for the time that we sit down to meditate. And maybe the bottom line is letting go of the sense of self. So often we have an idea that we have to accomplish something in meditation because we're very strongly conditioned that way, accomplishing things, getting things done, attaining things, becoming something, or getting rid of something so that, Bahatana, Vibhavatanha, dynamic. And really, in meditation, regardless of what kind of method we use, whether it's mindfulness of in and out breathing or some other meditation object, meditation really unfolds when we let go. So Ajahn Ganha says meditation is easy. You just breathe in happily, breathe out happily, breathe in relaxed, breathe out relaxed. In Thai, the word is sabai. Breathe in sabai, breathe out sabai. It's one of my favorite Thai words. And what is it like when we're not coming from the sense of me and I have to achieve something or get somewhere? I have to stay focused. I have to um, go into jhana, or I have to have a certain experience. And really, we know that it doesn't work to try to repeat a previous good experience, for example. But it's also, being able to step back and really observe what's happening in the mind, what's happening in the heart. That's the key to letting go. If I can be present with the mental state that I have at the moment, then I'm not caught up in it. I can see the sense of self in operation. And that's the place of that resting. Another thing I've shared a few times already, at different times, is this something Ajahn Ganha said about, when the mind never stops, like you're always working. That's my tendency. My mind wants to work. Very strong conditioning to want to be thinking and figuring it out and making sense of things. And Ajahn Ganha said it's like an airplane that never lands. Eventually it crashes. Need to really, really let the mind rest. So it's kind of fun to think about what it is like when we allow the meditation to be a vacation and really enjoy it. What is it? is that the way your meditation is? Maybe it is. Maybe when, you sit to meditate or do walking meditation or whatever the posture is, that there really is this feeling of happiness and relief and joy without effort. And of course, no, I don't think anyone's meditation is consistent all the time. I mean, I don't know that, of course, for sure, but I know that mine is affected by a lot of different forces. What I've been doing, what I've been thinking about, talking about, things that are coming up in life, the state of the body, how the body is feeling. And, we live in this realm of constant change, and that's internal and external, it's everywhere. So I don't think it's probably the case that meditation is consistent all the time. But one thing that we can do to bring order, to bring relief, is that idea of just taking the position of observing what's happening, regardless of what it is. And it's in that we can really relax. And we can see, what our conditioning is causing, what we're up to in a way. Are we trying to do something? And of course, then you start to think, well, then what does that mean? That we should try to not do something? And that's still the ego. That's still the sense of self. It's not about not doing anything. It's not about getting rid of everything. It's about relaxing and observing so that we're happy and at ease, even if what we're observing is a lot of anxiety or fear or whatever it is. See if you can really experience that sense of watching it, or listening to the mind, listening to it complain or fret or want. And really appreciate that that's the nature of this human form. It's a it's a realm of wanting and wanting to get rid of. And we don't have to go along with that. We can just watch it happen. So when I set my intention before I meditate, it makes a big difference on the experience, I find. So if I think about, okay, this is going to be a period of really relaxing and enjoying this meditation. And even if there's all kinds of stuff going through the mind, there's a way of really relaxing with it, enjoying it, watching it, observing it. It's like, oh, interesting, or whatever. But there's a power in our intention to kind of set the stage when we prepare to meditate. And particularly, often enough, hopefully every day, we really observe what's happening in the mind and observe what our habit patterns are, our tendencies. And if those tendencies are there that are strong to try to achieve something, that we recognize the positive side of that, and also the fact that it's possible to give it a holiday, you know. Yeah, I think Ajahn Sumedho mentioned recently that Ajahn Chah used to call meditation the holiday for the heart. So, just having that attitude and then observing where that takes you. Particularly when meditation gets kind of dry or we're really distracted, being present with the distractions of the mind, and also kind, bringing some kindness and understanding instead of the critic telling us that we should be doing something, about this. We're somehow failing or not up to our standard or whatever that is. That's downpulling and kind of reinforcing probably a pattern that we have in our mind through our life, through the rest of our life, whether it's our work or whatever. So this encouragement to let go of that kind of efforting and remember this, as someone else was saying earlier, this way of excuse me, right effort, which is a gentle attentiveness, not forcing, not belaboring, not bludgeoning the mind into some kind of formula or submission. And it can be challenging, and I think at first maybe kind of confusing because we talk about the 16 kind of instructions of Anapanasati, and we can feel like, oh, I have to like make something happen and feel certain things or experience certain things, but actually it's just a map. And what we experience as we encourage the attention to the breath and attention to the body and feelings and mental states and Dhamma can be a natural unfolding from a relaxed position. So we learn the steps or the instructions, and then we can allow the mind with very gentle encouragement to proceed into deeper and deeper states of peace, calm. And it's particularly helpful, excuse me, when we're in a particularly stressful context, whether it's what's happening in the world, where there's so much chaos and challenge, or whether it's happening in the natural unfolding of our life. As I said at the beginning, there's been a fair bit of death reflection already this morning, which is really wonderful. So wonderful to be able to acknowledge and be present with what naturally occurs in this experience of human life or any life. Excuse me. And to be able to witness it rather than being wrapped up in it, being resistant to it. So again, resistance is important. with regard to resisting unwholesome mental states or unwholesome actions, resisting certain kinds of sense input, resisting greed and hatred. But the resisting can happen. What's required is wisdom, that discernment about, what is it that's beneficial. We know, really, we know how we should be. To echo Ajahn Sumedho, he says that a lot. We all know how we should be. And how much do we have the control over what really comes into the mind and what we do with it? I think we don't have much control over what pops into the mind, except that we can begin to recondition the mind and even the brain. If we look at neuroscience around meditation and Buddhist practice, that the more we guide the mind to what's wholesome and happy and relaxed and kind. I don't know if any of you have watched the interview that the Clear Mountain monks did with Rick Hansen recently, the author of Buddha's Brain and many other interesting books that kind of bring together the connection of the Buddhist teachings and neuroscience. But at one point in that interview, Rick said, even a few breaths that are conscious and there's something good happening, like, the mind is, I think what he was meaning is that the mind is happy and settled and relaxed, can make a big difference on the wiring of the brain, on, and we can develop that that kind of positive cycle of, we're using this practice to be calm and peaceful and wise and aware. We're not trying to cover over anything or bypass anything, but just that peacefulness and calm and happiness that we can cultivate. And then that has an effect on actual structures of the brain. And then there's more support for the automatic or random or whatever thoughts and moods that arise in the mind to be more positive and to be more wholesome, healthy, happy, calm, relaxed. So, this is just a gentle reminder that we do have the agency to guide our experience and our development, and the responsibility too. And of course, it's extremely helpful to be doing this together in community. It's a real blessing to have spiritual friends, as you know. So I'd like to encourage the experimentation with this idea of the meditation vacation, and let us know how it goes. Sometimes vacations can be pretty stressful and unsettling, but we want the kind that you're really relaxing on the beach in Hawaii or whatever the most calming environment is you can think of. And, maybe for us, it's the walking meditation by the creek in the redwood forest, but, just see what you can do to bring real peace and happiness, and let go of the conditioning that creates stress and tension in the body and the mind. When we notice that that stress is there, then this gentle stepping back to the position of witnessing it, just this is the dramatic and subtle shift that makes it possible for us to be happier and gain insight into the development, the unfolding of the path. So I'm going to leave it at that for your reflection. And I'd love to hear any questions or comments you might have. Yes, Adrian.
Thank you for the talk, Ayya. Yeah, when you started and you were talking about letting go, I thought, so I was talking to Matthias and Ling yesterday, and it's like you were in our conversation because it's exactly what we were talking about. And Ling shared a meditation by Ajahn Brahm and he mentioned something along the lines of like the most important thing, regardless of the meditation topic and things, is like the letting go aspect. And yeah, I kind of I feel like I fallen into that trap of like um meditation is like doing something. So when I'm like practicing metta and it's like I can't just watch the breath because I have to cultivate metta, like I have to improve like this or that, and I'm just like coming to kind of more, yeah, that sense of like just relaxing and trusting to like focus just back to the breath and just to trust that that kind of calms the um kilesas and helps to kind of just bring up naturally those wholesome mind states and stuff. So yeah, this talk was really timely. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Adrian. We could just take some time to meditate together. It might be, well, let's hear from Philip first. Go ahead, Philip.
Thanks. I heard a talk from Ajahn Sumedho from last year, and he mentioned something that really hit me. Um, it's been in my mind for the last few days since I've heard him say it. He was recounting when he was a young monk and he was struggling with anatta, and he said he was so used to, oh, I get the instructions, I follow them diligently, I want to be a good bhikkhu, but he wasn't getting anywhere because all of that was still self. And when I heard that, the talk was last year, so this is like the now Ajahn Sumedho saying it. There was no pain in his voice when he's mentioning it, right? So I'm kind of projecting my own defilements on what he was saying, but I was picturing this young bhikkhu trying so hard and trying so hard to be a good bhikkhu, but even that was the wrong way to go about it. It's like the self is like so, it's like so devious. You're trying to use the teachings, but it's still, you're still trying. Um, what is it for people who struggle with getting over that? Like sometimes I feel like meditation, yes, sometimes I can hit samadhi when I have a good day, but that's still conditioned. And when I come out of it, I feel like I'm not uh I'm not staying concentrated. Is it just more I need to do the daily things like don't like bring more mindfulness into daily lives and then do things that I know I should do. Don't act out of fear or not do things because of fear. Whatever happens, use the meditation to reflect, keep the self out of it. Like how do I work with that if I feel like um it's so much is such a barrier. Like just even trying to use the teachings, it's still striving. It's like so devious. Like I want to follow teachings in a genuine way, but even that effort is self.
Yeah, and from everything I've heard from my teachers and experienced myself, that the shift, if you will, is pretty natural and subtle in a sense, because it's really that observing that, oh, okay, this is the self, engaged here again from all of this conditioning and wholesome desire to be good and do the right thing. But it's the self. So, like and if then the secondary kind of arrow that comes into the mind of how I shouldn't be doing that, and to really again step back and watch it, and it's, in my experience, it's the observing, like, yes, the Buddha seeing the Dhamma, observing this whole kind of entanglement of the sense of self kind of into everything. But there's also kindness there. And it's enough. It's just that much. It's like as we can see it and see that conditioning in play, and we can appreciate the good intentions, the positive aspect of the conditioning we've had from our parents or our whatever has helped us to be good people, to go towards what's wholesome and not the unwholesome, or our wish to follow the teachings, appreciating that part of it so much better than some other possibilities in a human life. And yet to is take that position of observing, of being the witness, and seeing that that's always possible. Excuse me, whatever's going on, we can look at it and with kindness and understanding. So when Ajahn Ganha says we have to enter right view, right understanding, and right practice, and it's like, okay, I reflect on, what does he mean by that? Well, the witnessing, the observing, seeing the sense of self in action, but the observing of it is the letting go of it. It's like you're in coming from a different place, not coming from the sense of self at that point. And then to the right view is knowing that all of those conditioned habits, ways of thinking, the efforting in that way, it's all sankharas, it's all impermanent, and it's all imperfect. And that coming from that place of observing it, where there is space and silence, and the letting go of that sense of self, that's sufficient. That's reliable. That's available. That's Dhamma. Immediate, here and now. We can observe these patterns and these tendencies from that position and really see what they're made of. And how we don't have to feel bad about that. Like even that, like I said, even if there's a bad feeling that comes up, we see that as sankhara. We see its conditioned nature. which means it's not permanent and it's not self and it's not perfect. So it's like this ongoing kind of moving from being, being self in action to being the observer of this experience, whatever is happening. And that the more we engage in that, the more we live from that place, the more we see the true nature of everything in this samsaric realm. The more we can rest in that awareness. I'm wondering how it might be for you to reflect upon that identification and see what you find. Mm-hmm. So, like, oh, there's this identification here. What is it like to observe it? Mm-hmm. And then the observer isn't in that identification. It's like looking at it, like taking more time. And it's hard when there's so much feeling there and get, so it needs more time and it needs more more love, I think. Mm-hmm. And that's what you're able to give it on a long retreat, because then there's more of a period of stillness and there's less stimulation triggering things, because when there's the continual reigniting of these feelings and thoughts, it can be very hard. Right. Yeah, but this is exactly the practice that's beneficial to do, because we will be in situations where there is a kind of bombardment of unpleasant sense experience, and the more we can practice for it, the more easily we can. Those are my thoughts on it anyway. Would you like to sit together a little bit? So just kind of dropping into awareness of our body, the body. Knowing that it's not really a possession of yours, it's just a borrowed vehicle. But it's very useful, and when we bring up mindfulness, establish mindfulness, that observer, what we really are observing is the Dhamma. And what is the Dhamma related to this body? And we know that the body is a very rich and complex collection of elements and processes. It's kind of amazing it works as well as it does, as complicated as it is. Can notice feelings we have in the body right now. And just acknowledging. So Buddha's instructions generally start with acknowledging the way things are right now. And inviting the body to relax, regardless of whatever discomfort or dis-ease it may have. relaxing around the discomfort, relaxing actually oftentimes helps to bring some level of relief. And maybe instead of thinking of putting attention on our breathing as a way that we're going to get into some meditation, just observing how paying attention to the breath helps us to really relax. And if there's discomfort in some area of the body and we breathe in, we can imagine the breath going right to that area, soothing and letting go a bit more, maybe a bit more with every out breath. And the mindfulness is keen and clear. And you can notice changes in the body, changes in your feeling. Peaceful relaxation. There might be some pleasant sensations coming from that, relaxing. Sabai. And if there are thoughts or other activity in the mind, we can bring some awareness to it, observe. And invite those thoughts to become more calm, relaxed. Taking a vacation. We can bring our attention to the underlying mood or temper of the mind. Just noticing if it's a little down pulling or if it's really happy and content. If there's any desire or longing, wanting to get something or get rid of something. Or maybe that identification with that false sense of self, me and mine. We can notice. If there's dukkha, there's the sense of self. We can understand why it's there. And remember that it's also just a concocted, conditioned perception. There is no separate self on the ultimate level. In this world of sankharas, of conditioned things, Obviously, we operate as an individual. But when we see it with wisdom and discernment, we can recognize it as something that is brought together by conditions and will fall apart. If we can observe this all from our position of Bhutto, seeing the Dhamma, and we get a sense of our true nature. Relaxed, compassionate, nothing to lose, nothing to gain. Can develop a sense of trust in that awareness. Where we're really relying on the Dhamma, where that's the stance we take. Not the sense of self. Certainly, if we're clinging to our feelings, our views, our opinions, our likes and dislikes, then the sense of self is there. And so is dukkha. But when we observe that, whatever it is in this present moment, it's not the sense of self we're coming from, it's the Dhamma, the Buddha, the enlightened mind, the awakened awareness, seeing the nature of these things, the true nature. And if we notice trying to get somewhere, or feelings of desire or boredom or whatever it might be, as soon as we notice and we see it for what it actually is, we're in that stance of the witness. And we're removed from the suffering. Letting go. And you might experience a sense of relief or some happiness. Not from a sensual experience, but from the Dhamma. And then some thought might come into the mind or some feeling that tries to pull us back into this identification, selfing. And if we have this habit that we're developing, this practice of observing, then we can see it right away. How it's just conditioned phenomenon coming out of the past. And then I've noticed in myself that when the mind sees those thoughts, feelings, perceptions for what they are, there's a tendency to smile. And regardless of what arises, images, light, sound, if it's a sound like the nada sound that's steady and available when the mind is still, when we take this stand of being aware, then it's positive and helpful to notice what that's really coming from, that it's consistent. But regardless of what arises in the mind, we can recognize it as conditioned phenomena. That's the difference. What part is conditioned and what part is really just constantly there? And we can know that through our own investigation to see for ourselves. And sometimes we might feel apprehensive about letting go because we're so used to holding on. These bodies we have, the conditioning of the brain, the mind is really coming out of survival instinct. Just like any other animal, wanting to satisfy the needs of the body. But when we rest in awareness, we can see that that's inevitably all going to fall apart. As a human being, we don't have to live according to that principle. that live according to Dhamma. Letting go of those coarser requirements and tendencies, and seeing how living by the Dhamma brings relief and an ability to respond to what's happening without the sense of self. Spontaneously. Engage in what's useful, helpful, beneficial. Okay.